Hello movie nerds, and welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, the podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are going to talk about Gen V. Now, Gen V is the offshoot or spin-off series of the television show The Boys. I am a little bit familiar with The Boys comic books. I am more familiar with The Boys television series. I very much enjoy The Boys television series upon occasion, mostly in season 3. I feel like because I was aware of the comic book version of the subject matter that season 3 went into, I wasn't exactly sure how they were going to pull off some of that stuff, because I know The Boys comic books can delve into places that I feel like are even uncomfortable for me, like pushes the boundaries beyond what even the television show has done. But the television show I do enjoy. You know, occasionally it's a little bit uncomfortable. I feel like that is the whole point. That's what makes The Boys The Boys, and what makes it so fun is that it is pushing those boundaries and is just over the top and kind of messed up, you know? But I do like it. I enjoy the characters a lot. Homelander has to be one of my favorite characters because he's a psycho, and that is what is so enjoyable about The Boys, is that you don't have like Superman, Batman, whatever. Like, you have Homelander, who is an absolute psychotic freakazoid, and I love watching him. So I was expecting Gen V to just be The Boys, but maybe with younger kids. And I wasn't exactly sure how they were planning to handle that, because I know in terms of The Boys, you know, the Supes and stuff and the people with abilities are not like the X-Men, where they're just kind of everywhere and there are a lot of them. I had always sort of assumed that this was something that was a little bit more rare. That's why it was kind of an issue, you know, with Annie not being able to come forward and really say anything about like how she was being treated, or some of the things that, you know, Homelander or some of the other characters were doing to her, was because there wasn't really the option of just going out into the world and finding someone to replace them. Like it kind of was a big deal to become a part of the Seven. So with Gen V, obviously they are introducing that there are quite a lot of kids coming up with these abilities. And to me, that takes away from The Boys in some aspects, but is not the reason why I did not enjoy Gen V. So we will kind of jump into that and what my thoughts are. I really was anticipating, again, The Boys, but just younger. And I feel like kind of what I got was like, if you look at Willow, for instance, the movie, and then you look at what Disney did with the Willow television series, I feel like The Boys and Gen V is basically that repeated. Like, The Boys is this really great, fun television show to watch, and Gen V was kind of like the trash series that they spun off from it. I very much do not enjoy Gen V. I think the acting is really bad in a lot of places, and it's so bad that teamed up with that sort of edgy material kind of just makes it cringy instead of fun and enjoyable. I think a lot of the characters are just whiny. There's a lot of stuff in there that also just didn't make a terrible lot of sense to me. Like the main character in Gen V, for instance, her ability, and this is going to be a spoiler for anyone who hasn't watched any of this series yet, but her ability is basically turning her own blood and like the blood of others into like solidified weapons. So she can almost turn it into like crystallized versions of itself, which can then be thrown outward and like stabbed into people. She can spin it out with like a lot of force. And in the first episode, you know, that's kind of how it opens. But there is a later sequence that shows her kind of slicing into her own palms, which, side note, I don't know why whenever anybody has to cut themselves open, the palms are where they're going. Do you realize how painful that would be? Like, why do people stop doing that in shows? Anyway, she's slicing into her own palms and like extracting her own blood in order to use it as a weapon. And to me, I feel like that is the worst superpower that you could possibly ever have, because you are essentially killing yourself in order to just defend yourself or have a weapon. Like, I don't feel like it ever explained if her blood is like regenerating twice as quickly. She always seems like she's very like depleted afterwards. And I'm like, do you realize how much blood she's using? She would just be dead. She would just die. Like, you couldn't ever be part of the Seven. You couldn't ever be out in an actual battle unless you were like, you'd have to constantly be pulling blood from elsewhere. You could, even if you started with yourself, like, you couldn't maintain that for very long. I don't know if they ever explained it in like further episodes. I don't remember it being in the first one, at least, if they discussed that. But I don't like most of the characters. I don't like the concept, I guess, of the school. And this, to me, other than like, I feel like the sort of pushed the edgy sort of topics that they cover, or those scenes that sort of push the boundaries, the ones with the blood and the exploding and the, you know, the things that we're used to in The Boys, I feel like that is still pretty much on par. Like, they're still definitely pushing the boundaries as far as what is doable on TV. But I feel like Gen V sort of is more of the type of show that you would see on like the CW. It's kind of ish like Riverdale, but it's not something that I would personally want like my teenage kids to be sitting at home watching. But to me, that is the equivalent of what Gen V is. I don't feel like it comes off as like an adult series the way that The Boys does. It very much feels like something that kids or teenagers should be watching, but with material that I think is above what kids should be watching. Like, it's like NC-17 content with CW acting and drama, and that combination just does not work well for me. So I very much did not enjoy Gen V. You guys will have to let me know what you thought of this series if you have watched it at all. Subscribe if you want to join the Movie Nerd family, and I hope to see you in the next episode.